Today it's very popular that people want to tune and turbo convert their car by themselves. But it will be the day then you need to repair the turbocharger. That's why we do a tutorial how to do this. Please enjoy. Okay, we start by removing compressor and turbine housing. Then carefully pull up the compressor housing. Try to not damage the compressor wheel. So. Sometimes if you use turbocharger for a while, some bolts can be rusty, so it's the good idea to use some kind of oil rust remover before you get violent and break something. So then we have a core. The easiest way to do it at home and fasten the shaft in the vise. Just like that. Yes? So, when you tighten the shaft in the vise, the next step is to remove the nut. Okay, and remember, this is the left thread, so when you're gonna loosen it, don't turn it left, turn it right, like this. The next step is to remove the compressor wheel, and you don't need to get violent to lose the wheel. Before you remove the compressor wheel, you need to heat it up with a heat gun. Yeah, heat gun, yeah. Like this. Just keep going. And we can try if it's good enough. Yes, perfect. Okay, next step is to remove the core. Okay, next step is to check how the ceilings look like. The ceilings must turn easily around and they must be stretched out like this. Just like piston rings on the pistons. Next step is to put on some new ceilings. The easiest way, like I said, is to fasten the shaft in the vise. Like this. Take new ceilings. One or two. Then make sure that the gap between the rings must point at each side. So one ring, the gap here, and the second ring on the other side. So you have to turn it. One here, one here. Otherwise the oil will leak through the gap between two ceilings. Yes. So the shaft is done. Next step, change the bearings. Then we remove the back plate. And just remove the back plate. Just check those bearings on the cold side. But this is very unusual to warn bearings on the front on the cold side. So usually you don't need to change this part. It happens almost never that those ceilings are worn. You can reuse them. This part you can reuse. This is the axle bearing, the most commonly broken part in the turbocharger. Those two parts. You can see sometimes it can look like this, and this is too much. So if you repair, you must repair before this kind of shit happens. Those two little guys. the axial play in the turbocharger. In and out. So then we have radial bearings. You need this kind of stuff to remove the ring. And then you can just pull it off. Before you install the bearings, you need to put some oil on them. This. And back. You can just turn it with a screwdriver and make sure that the ring is in place like this. And the bearings moving easy. I forgot to say, before they install the bearings, you clean it up in the core. You can use this kind of stuff with brake cleaner or some kind of stuff. So very important. Then you do the same thing on the other side. Exactly the same thing. Make sure this area is clean. You can clean it before you install the shaft. So here you can see the ceilings is against this area inside here. So it must be clean and made it properly. And when the core is done, then it's time to install the axial bearing and the washer. As usual, you put some oil. Bearing. Don't forget the oil drain roller coaster. Before you install cold side ceilings, you can put some oil. Make sure that the gap between ceilings is just the same on the hot side. One here, one here. And then put it back. Make sure that it's turning light, moving easy. Okay, new ceiling ring, and then it's time to install the backplate. Okay, for the bolts and nuts we use Loctite 272, the strongest one. Just apply a little bit and put it in. The next one. So then we are done with the core. New bearings and stuff. Next step is the shaft. Put the shaft inside the core. And we check the shaft with the new bearings. We double check always the gap between the ceilings and set them point each side. Then we fasten the shaft in the vise. Yes, like this. Sometimes with the new ceilings it can be a little bit difficult to insert the bearing house. First, you can always try before you use this part just to put the bearing house, and you can check the under here so the ceilings goes in. Sometimes you can help it with a screwdriver a little, like this. Now it's in. Then you can wait a little while till the ceilings take some form. Then you remove the bearing house back with
that thing,
yeah, and click back with the bearing house. It must turn easily like this. Then it's correct. Very easy. So the next step, compressor wheel. Just like with removing of the compressor wheel, we need to heat it up. Take the wheel and start heating up. Yeah, and we make it dry. Use some gloves because this thing is probably a little bit heat right now. No, not enough. You can even use the blowtorch to heat up the wheel. And you point it on the middle in the hole. Sometimes it takes a while, so you can always just stay and scratch your zalupa when you heat it up. Okay, we make it dry. Like this, it should look like this. Cling, boom, schmadak, easy and done. Then we just wait a little while to cool it down before we install the nut. If you have compressed air, you can always use it to cool it down faster. Next step, the nut. Always use Loctite. We use the strongest one, 272, because you don't want to have the nut inside your intake manifold. And remember, this is the left thread. Turn it left when you tighten it. Yes. Okay, next part is very important, the torque. If the shaft is M7, then you set 15 Newton meters torque. If you have the shaft with the M8, then you set it to 17 Newton meters torque. 15 Newton meters torque for the M7 thread. And you turn it left. Boom! Finish. Then you check the bearing housing, the core moving very easy. No stocking, no vibration, very easy. No axle play, just a little bit play with the radial bearings, little bit. Not up and down, just to the sides. It's always good to make sure that you have oil inside the core. You can always put some extra oil inside. You see, it's perfectly moving. Not spinning, but moving. No, but not moving, but spinning. So, then the next step that many people and other stuff makes it wrong. For example, if you're not sure which direction you're going to install your compressor housing, before you decide it, you do it without rubbering. You first put the compressor housing, and then when you decide the position, you just mark it with a
marker.
With the marker, yes, mark it with the marker, like this. Then we put back the ring. And most important, put some oil. So you will not damage it when you turn the compressor housing. Like this. Then you take the compressor housing and carefully you're starting to pressing down like this. Boom! Some turbocharger models has very tight machined compressor housings, and this is aluminum and it can shrink when it's cold. So if it's cold in your garage and maybe on your balcony and you will install it, it's gonna be too tight. So you need to heat it up with the gun, like this. Just good to know. Then you can turn a little bit with the ring, but don't turn a lot with the ring on. Yes, otherwise the ring will break. So you can turn it a little bit, just to adjust. It's just the bolts. And remember, very important, those bolts torque, it's only 10 newton meters. 10 newton meters because it's aluminum, it's not steel. So 10 newton meters torque, remember that. Otherwise you will destroy the threads. 10 newton meters, remember that. You can always check the shaft with spinning the shaft. You can even, if you have the compressed air, you can even blow the air inside the turbine house. To see that the shaft is proper, it's not bending, it's spinning straight and no bowling. Very important, because it happens when some people they suck in stuff in the turbo, like lamps and stuff in the engine bay, so that you can bend the shaft. So always check the shaft, it's not bended. Perfect. You can always check your turbocharger before the repair. If you have play up and down, but if it's too much play up and down, it means that the turbocharger went dry without oil, or the oil is dirty or overheated. It's up and down. But with the new bearings, it's a little bit play up and down. Okay, up and down and at the sides. It must be a little bit play for the oil, because it's floating bearings. It's not ball bearing, it's floating bearing. So it must be a little bit play. If you have play in and out like this, it's very common issue. Usually because of too small oil drain from the turbo. Like you see, the hole is 20 millimeters. Some people use the hole like, I don't know, like a virgin homosexual hole, you know, just a few millimeters. Of course, it's gonna be too high oil pressure inside the core, and the bearings, axial bearings, start pushing the side and it breaks, and even it's slowing down the shaft. The shaft can never reach full speed, and you lose power and you get even slower boost, slower spool, only because of the oil drain. So the minimum oil drain for the floating bearing turbocharger, it's 15 to 16 millimeters inside size, like for example AM12 size, but all the way inside. So it doesn't help you if you have 16 millimeters here and in oil pan it's only 10. It doesn't help, it must be all the way 16 millimeters. This is the minimum size of the oil drain. A good example, maybe you buy some fitting, then you check the hole, yeah, like you see 16, almost 17, you think, oh, it's very good, I can use it. But on the other side, wow, it's only 11. So you must drill it and make it 16 before you install it. Otherwise, finito, axial bearing finito. The same things with the oil feed. To reduce the pressure inside the core and increase the spool of the shaft, you need 2 millimeters restrictor, like this, you see. By installing the restrictor, you can increase the power and increase the spool, to get faster spool. Before you repair the turbo, before you repair the turbina, make sure that your turbina is balanced, each part separately. You can see it here. Because many brands are not, then you need to
Go somewhere and balance it.
Yeah, go somewhere and balance it. You can see it balance it under the wheel. So make sure that your turbocharger is balanced each part separately. But if you have racing turbo that not older than, we say, 5 years, 7 years, then it's probably balance it each part separately. So you can just repair it and just go full throttle, no low gain boost. And after you finish, you need to do one last thing. You take this kind of shit and put it like this, and you say magic words. No turbina, no good, prostitution bridge. Boom! Voila! And you have 90mm turbocharger, fat boy, much better.